Hello, I'm Theo Vorster. I want to share a few tips on retirement. And the first principle is about timelines. Remember, let's say you start to work when you age between 25 and 30. Then you work for 30 to 35 years until you're 65. The key now is from 65, the time that you have left, your money needs to support your retirement. And nobody wants to drop their standard of living during retirement. That means be very careful, because your money will need to look after you for the next 20, even 30 years. You need to have enough exposure to growth assets to make sure that your money keeps track with inflation. A big mistake people make is, all of a sudden when they retire, they go into cash. They go into assets that does not outperform inflation. That means after 5 or 10 years, inflation starts to catch up with them. So the first point is, make sure, because of the timeline, your money will need to look after you, maintain your standard of living for a number of decades. Make sure you have enough exposure to growth assets so that inflation doesn't catch up with you. The second point is, when I look at people that are on the brink of retiring, and when you do the calculations, you find that they will need to lower their standard of living. Now, the biggest single effect, or the biggest change they can make, is to work for an additional 3, 4, or 5 years. Why is that so? Because simply in that 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, you are not dependent on your capital, therefore you don't make drawdowns. Secondly, in the end, the years that your capital needs to sustain your living standard is shortened by these 3 or 5 years. But during these 3 or 5 years, you can add to your retirement funding. So don't underestimate the effect of another 2, 3, 4 years of working. It'll make a massive difference on the money you can withdraw during your retirement. And then thirdly, it becomes more and more important to do proper planning in terms of budgeting and in terms of the drawdowns. Why? Remember, usually during the retirement, the value or the ability to generate cash flow is lowered. And the older you get, the more it lowers. So you cannot make up for any big mistakes. So rather focus on proper planning, having a proper budget, and make sure that you draw the amount of money that is sustainable given your capital. And then lastly, be smart when it comes to tax and tax planning. Remember, different products, different structures has different tax rates. The aim is, the lower you can get your overall tax rate, the more of your capital ends up in your pocket and not in the government's pocket.